Okay, I'm just going to introduce myself first. Oh, my mom is joining. Okay, gotta let her in. Okay, my name is Golda.Ovias. I am the Visitor Services Coordinator and Museum Educator here at the Utah Museum of Contemporary Art in Salt Lake City. That's where I am right now in my boss's office. We love that. And the Utah Museum of Contemporary Art, or UMOCA as we lovingly call it, welcome Anne, has been around for 90 years. So next year we're celebrating our 90th anniversary. We're really excited about it. We have a really rich history. We were founded by a woman named Alta Rollins Jensen. During the Great Depression, she felt that Utahns didn't have accessibility to contemporary and avant-garde art. So she was way ahead of her time, and when we start our little presentation, I'll share with you our mission statement, which we have rewritten in 2020. And it's really exciting and just encapsulate everything that we're about as an institution. So now I'm thrilled to introduce you to Angie, who's joining us from California right now.
Actually, Idaho.
Idaho, okay. It was either LA or Boise.
Yeah, Boise, Idaho.
Okay, great. So Angie, as you all know, is a photographer. She's based in Boise, Idaho, and Los Angeles. She was born in Eugene, Oregon, and studied photography at Bard College in upstate New York. I'm jealous. I want to live in New York right now. She works with publications and companies such as the New York Times Magazine, The New Yorker, Bloomberg Businessweek, Wired, ESPN, Nike, and Booking.com. In 2015, so 5 years ago, Smith founded Stronger Shines the Light Inside, a multimedia project documenting the lives of refugees in America through photographs, film, and interviews. And you'll all be experts on this initiative and project in an hour. In September 2016, Stronger Shines the Light Inside was exhibited on the streets of downtown Boise. A photo essay on the project was published in the New York Times Magazine, The New Republic, and National Geographic. Smith was invited to the White House for a summit honoring successful resettlement practices throughout the U.S. Stronger Shines the Light Inside is expanding to include additional resettlement cities, such as ours in Salt Lake City. Angie has taught numerous photo workshops for National Geographic, student expeditions, Slide Luck Youth Initiative, and Young Arts in Los Angeles, Ecuador, Florence, Barcelona, London, and Paris, which is amazing. So if you'd like to see additional work from her, we're going to show you all the resources throughout the presentation. We'll guide you to the right websites. But Angie, we are so happy that you're joining us and really looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. Salt Lake has a very special place in my heart because I spent 6 weeks there with a grant working on this project. So I'm so excited to be here with you all, and thank you for taking the time to talk with me about this work.
Yes, thank you everyone that's here. We're glad to welcome you virtually back to Salt Lake. Okay, I'm now sharing our presentation. Here's our names again. And like I said, UMOCA's mission statement is that we believe in the power of the art of our time. Through programming, advocacy, and collaboration, we work with artists and communities to build a better world. So that's quite an ambitious mission statement, and we could not do it alone. We haven't been doing it alone since our conception in 1931. And we really rely on collaborations like Angie and Stronger Shines the Light Inside to help us serve our communities and really offer Utahns and those who visit us a deep look into contemporary art and an opportunity to really realize why it's relevant and powerful. So you know a little bit about Angie. She's going to speak a little bit about how this project came about, what inspired her, and how it's changed over the years. It's been 5 years since you started it in Idaho, and so we'd just love to know how such a powerful and significant project began.
Yes. So I officially started this project 5 years ago, but I would say that the seed of the idea was actually planted about 5 years prior to that. Around 2010, I was visiting family in Boise. I was at the time living in Los Angeles and came to Boise to visit, and noticed that there were more, we've had a refugee, we've been a refugee resettlement state since 1975. So depending on the global situation in any given decade, we've had different demographics of refugees who've been coming to Boise. And so I think when I first really the idea clicked for me was in around 2010 when I was visiting family and just noticed, you would drive around Boise and you just notice people more than I ever did before. And I think oftentimes because when a lot of refugees first get resettled, within the first couple years of living here, oftentimes they're still wearing the clothing that is culturally part of their original countries. So being in a place like Boise, Idaho, the contrast between culturally those cultures coming and finding place within the city is just visually more striking than it would be in like New York or LA or other cities where you're used to seeing a lot of cultures living in one particular area. So I started to reach out to some of the resettlement agencies to see if I could start a portrait project. And I just didn't get a lot of traction. I think it was because at that time in our country and in our society, the concept of like storytelling in the way of like Humans of New York was very groundbreaking, I think, for people on a mass scale to really understand the importance of storytelling in the context of like social media and Instagram. So I think like that Humans of New York really helped on a mass scale, people really see how powerful it was to share stories. So I think that a lot of the refugee agencies at the time in 2010 were really concerned about the safety of their clients and felt like it was just too private. Like they really wanted to keep the identity and the stories and the experiences of their clients private. Which was really understandable given the place we were in a society at that time. But then about 5 years later, I was visiting again and then had a more like personal friendship with a woman, a girl around my age from the Congo. We became good friends, and through that friendship, she loved to have her picture taken, and I was able to sort of start the process of photographing someone, and I needed to figure out like how was I going to approach it lighting wise. There are so many different visual and artistic decisions to make that she allowed me to experiment with different styles. And then she also introduced me to her family and friends and neighbors. And I started to photograph people within her life. And in the beginning, I was really just trying to get to know people, and I would offer to take a family photograph and then, give prints to them. And then it allowed me to start to work out how I was going to approach this project. And then I quickly realized that there was so much more than just taking a picture, that this project needed to be so much more than just taking a picture. Like I would spend about 30 minutes to 2 hours with every person, depending on the person and the conversation. And every photography session that I did, there was just we talked about so much, and there was so much depth and so much just incredible information that I felt like needed to be shared with others. And especially being in a place like Boise at that time, I felt like there were so many different segments of the population that really knew nothing about our resettlement program, or the different nationalities that, like, the different situations, the political situations that people had fled from. There's just so much information that people just didn't know. And there was a disconnect between, I felt like our refugee population was somewhat isolated and not being like integrated into like the greater community. And I just felt like if people knew more about what the reasons why they came, what were the situations that they fled from, all of these personal stories, that would help to start bridge the gap, and you know, bring people in to our into our society and the specific community of Boise in ways that were much more, that just like created a more a different perspective for them to have like more relationships with people that were from Boise or had lived here for a long time. So that's kind of how the project started. And then I got a grant soon after from the City of Boise Department of Arts and History, and then that gave me the funding to work on it for the next year or so. And then the final result being that I would install an exhibition outdoors in public spaces, because I really wanted to put the work in places that where people who had no intention of stumbling upon it could stop and see a photograph and see an interview excerpt. And even if they just stopped and saw one photograph and read one excerpt, they would walk away feeling like they had a different perspective or a different understanding. And I ended up installing about 50 final photographs and interview excerpts. So that was kind of the beginning in Boise. And then from that point on, in the last 5 years, I've had grants in Salt Lake and Portland, Oregon, and we'll watch a film on the next slide, but I made a series of short films. And then I eventually moved to Boise full time. So now I've been here for a year and a half, and a part of my reason for moving back here full time is just to have this work really be a part of my everyday life, rather than like fly in from LA for a couple months and focus on it and then leave. But I really wanted this work to be a part of my everyday life on many levels.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Angie. I love hearing the background of the project, because it was born out of a friendship, and so you can tell that the whole initiative is very authentic, that you really connected with those that you photographed. You'd spend time and commit and invest in their story, and that really shines through. I think the images are so powerful, and they are really representative of the struggles that these people went through, but also the joy that they can find in these new beginnings. And I think Boise, like you touched on a little bit, was the perfect place for this project to start, because these refugees stood out, right? You said maybe New York City has a lot more nationalities in the neighborhoods, and it's just a little bit more diverse. But in Boise, there was that disconnect from the residents that were already there, and then the new coming citizens, that there was that disconnect. And I think it's so easy for ignorance to turn into prejudice if people don't get that context or really are willing to connect with people on a personal level. So I'm really excited for all of us to learn more about this project and kind of realize how art helps us cultivate more empathy. I think empathy is something that we can all have more of, especially right now, and it's hard work cultivating it. So I hope that at the end of this, we're all motivated to engage in that as you have. So Angie, I don't know if you want to introduce this next story, Halima. We're going to watch it all together.
Yes. So this short film is about a girl named Halima Hamoud, and when I filmed it, she was a senior in high school, and she, you know, it's been a few years, so now she is in the middle of her studies at Boise State University. She just ran for, she actually was elected as student body president at Boise State University, and just, I think last weekend was part of the Miss Africa Idaho pageant, and I think she got first runner-up. I don't think she won, but she got first runner-up. So it's been really cool to watch her take on these big challenges where she's really putting herself out there and making herself vulnerable and taking on these leadership roles. So it's interesting. I was watching this film when I was getting ready for this talk, and I was just reflecting on how many big things she's done since we filmed this. So let's watch it.
My name is Halima Hamoud. I was born in one of camps in Kenya. Coming to America, it was all new and confusing. The first month, I think I was just crying because I miss my dad. My mom would be like, "Oh, it's okay. He's gonna come." But like, he never came. Back when I was in the camp, I knew I was my skin color, but I didn't realize what it means, you know, because I lived in a camp where it was all Black people. When I was there, I felt this closeness that I could talk to anyone. But when I came here, like I had to learn what I was. I just remember like going to school, all my classmates were white, and I felt like different. I didn't have like anyone to talk to. When I got to elementary, like sixth grade, this bullying started, and like I remember them making fun of my hijab. It was in seventh grade. It was junior high, and I made my two best friends in gym. When I started communicating with them, that's when I learned English, and like I felt that closeness again. And they didn't look at me differently just because I wear the hijab. I want to work with people. I want to work with people that are able to have a voice. Coming to America is very difficult, and each like change or progress you make, even though to my classmates it's like okay, but to me it's like wow, I got this far, you know. Congratulations, beautiful life. I'm proud of the person that I have turned out.
Would you like to say anything to follow up that video, Angie?
I just think, yeah, it's really touching to watch that again after I haven't watched it in a while. And I just think out of all the interviews that I've done, I mean, I've done so many interviews with so many different age groups, and I just think that some of the points and the things that she talked about the difficulty of coming to an American high school, and in her words, you know, she had to learn who she was, or who she was in the context of our society here. And I think that is really, really hard for so many kids her age. And I think that's one of the huge challenges of being in school and having to adjust. So I think it's really amazing that all of these amazing teachers and educators are on this call, because I think all of the roles that you play in the lives of students who are coming from other countries and facing these challenges is critical. And we can talk more about that maybe in the Q&A.
Yes, after Angie and I discuss, we can open it up to everyone. And if you have questions while we're talking, feel free also to interrupt us, either unmute yourself or just put it in the chat. But I loved what you said, Angie, about her figuring out her identity again within the context of the United States, and that there were some realizations that she didn't make until she came here, and she was a minority. She says where she was from before, almost everyone was Black, and she didn't realize that it suddenly became such a big part of her identity in coming here. So there are a few different films on the Stronger Shines the Light Inside website, as well as interviews with refugees. So I'm just letting more people in. That would be really great to show students. So it's really high quality. The stories that these individuals share are really personal, and they're being vulnerable in sharing them. So prepare your classes. If you do assign it virtually, you're not there to facilitate before and after right away. If you do assign them, make some preparation to introduce students to what they'll be watching and kind of remind them to have an open mind and think about empathizing with the stories and seeing how they can change their daily lives in response to them. And again, we'll link them here. And I will share this slides deck as a Google slide and a PDF, so educators, you can use these in your classroom. We have 5 general questions that Angie and I are going to discuss, but just to give a little more context to what the Stronger Shines the Light Inside website has, are the stories from these individuals. So when I share this, it just links to their stories. I'll just show you all these photographs. And then at the conclusion of talking about all of these questions, we'll open it up, like I said, to anyone that would like to ask Angie a question. So, my first question, Angie, and everyone saw it briefly, was why do you think photography is such a powerful medium for storytelling?
I think that photography is really powerful because it doesn't give you all of the answers. A photograph is, I mean, a good photograph, I guess, has elements of symbolism, or it's almost like looking at a puzzle that's missing several key parts, but there's enough of the puzzle to look at so that you can start to form your own idea of what you think this picture is about. But it doesn't give you all the answers. It leaves a lot of things open for interpretation. And you can ask yourself when you're looking at a photograph, how does this photograph make me feel? And I think that, yeah, I think it's really about just, I think it's a good photograph is powerful because it makes you think and it makes you ask questions, and it doesn't just give you the answer. You have to kind of interpret it for yourself and, you know, draw your own conclusion on what you think the photograph is saying. But it doesn't really matter what the artist intended. I think it's really about how it affects you and what you think the message is.
Mm-hmm. I love that comparison to a puzzle piece. A lot of your photographs have accompanying text from the person that was sitting for the portrait. So how important was it to you that the photographs didn't just live as that one image? Was it important that you had that person with accompanying text telling their story?
Yeah, I think it was because I felt like in terms of what originally inspired me to create this project was trying to provide a solution or a anecdote to what I was seeing within my own community. And I say, like, one thing I want to say before I complete that point is that I was in a really unique position because I didn't grow up in Boise, but I grew up kind of spending a lot of time there. So I was I had this insider outsider role. So, and then by the time I started this project, I had already, I'd grown up in one place, and then I'd gone to college in another place, and then I did, lived in a lot of different places and had a lot of different experiences to really be able to see Boise from a different perspective. So I felt like I was in a unique position to try to create something that would help like alleviate this like separateness that I was seeing amongst the community. And I felt like it was really important to include the stories, but include it in their words. Like I didn't want to record interviews with people and then like paraphrase what they said, or sort of, I'm not a writer, and it was important to me that it was exactly their words, exactly, and that there wasn't my hand in that. But I would say that my hand it has to be in the editing, because I had to make them like digestible, or be able to read like one or two paragraphs and come away with an understanding. So I didn't change their words, but I did have to shorten. But yeah, I just felt like it was really important to share the stories. Absolutely. Yeah, that I think for this particular, like the reason that this project was inspired in the first place, I felt like that was what was needed to create more unity within our community in Boise.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. We had one person ask a question. Steven says, did you include any Basque in your project?
Actually, I did not include any Basque people in Stronger Shines the Light Inside, because I was mostly focused on resettled refugees. But then I did do another project in 2019 called Open Air Archive, which was an outdoor exhibition of historic photographs that I researched between the Idaho Historic Society and also families that are still in Boise. I researched the earliest immigrant groups that were a part of the founding and establishing of the city. And then I did about 2 months of historic research, pulled hundreds of photographs of all different populations of people. And then I edited it down to about 30 final installations, and then printed the pictures out life size, and then wheat pasted them onto the sides of the buildings. So if you walked around downtown Boise, you stumble upon these old photographs from like 1930 of different groups of people, individuals. And within Open Air Archive, I did have several Basque photographs and Basque families.
Thanks for that question, Stephen. Angie, I'm interested in the process of choosing what your subjects or the individuals in your photographs were wearing. So as you respond, I'm going to share my screen again so everyone can see those images. But one of the elements that really struck me was what they were wearing, or in some cases, the interior, if it was a domestic interior. They're just so vivid and bright, and I think your lighting really plays off of that. And so did you allow them to choose what they wore? Did you encourage them to wear something from their home countries?
It kind of depended on the person and how it, there are a bunch of different elements to it. It depended on like how I met the person, because sometimes I would be at a wedding or something, and I would meet someone that was wearing the most incredible, like, what, let me see, there's a one page where you have one particular portrait that I want to point out. Let me see.
This one?
It's the one of the woman standing in the middle of the apartment complex. She's wearing green. Her name is Alphonse.
Yes.
On one of these pages, but we'll find it. But if I met someone in a context where they were wearing something really striking, then usually I would, approach them, or, ask them if they would want to be a part of the project. And then sometimes I'd say, will you wear this outfit when we do our portrait? This is so beautiful. Or, but sometimes it really depends, because if I photographed like this photograph of Baraka, at the time he was a junior in high school. So he was kind of, I think he'd been in Boise for about 3 years. So he was kind of in that, in between time. Like, his father was a tailor. And when I first met him, I met him at a prom. I was shooting for the New York Times Magazine, this photo essay. So I was shooting all these proms, and I met him at one of the proms, and he was wearing the shirt that he's wearing in this photograph, but actually he had a hat that was matching, and I want to say even the pants were the same fabric. Like, it was, he looked incredible. He was the best dressed person at the whole prom. And so for this picture, he wore the shirt, but then he mixed it up with his own style. So I try not to be too heavy-handed in asking them what they would wear, because I would want them to choose, like, how do they want to represent themselves or present themselves. But there were some situations where, like, we met under a circumstance where, like, they were just wearing something so amazing. So it kind of, and then I also, in my interviews, like, I often tried to do the interview first, because the interview is usually like an hour and a half to 2 hours. And so much information came from that interview, and visual ideas of, I learned so much about the person, about their childhood, about like these poignant memories of the most important places they go in Idaho that remind them of home. Like, there's so many parts of the interview that come out that give me visual ideas for the photograph. So I also try to let the interview guide how the picture is going to be. And then some people just love, like, this picture of Sarbabi. She loves to dress up, and she just has the most incredible outfits. She decorates, every time I come to her house, it's like decorated differently, and the furniture is rearranged, and and so she loves to like dress up and look her best. And so for her, it made sense to like photograph her in one of her most amazing outfits in the room that she decorated. So it's kind of a combination, but I really try to let them guide what the visuals are.
Mm. Thanks for expounding on that. Yeah, especially in Sarbabi's, the colors are so rich and happy, and I love that about her portrait. And I think textiles and patterns and the things that we wear are so important to our self-identity. And in the educator handbook that Yumoka has created in this collaboration, there's one activity that is a self-identity triptych. So triptych meaning just a 3-paneled work. They were really popular in the Renaissance and in cathedrals as religious art. But in that one, we invite students to take a self-portrait. I mean, probably all of them have 1 million on their camera roll from selfies that they've done. And then choose a quote or something that, like a personal motto of theirs that's especially meaningful. And then a textile that they feel like represents their culture, their heritage, or their likes, dislikes, and things like that. And so doing that myself was really interesting, just thinking about maybe patterns or motifs or certain colors even that represent where I come from or who I've become now. And so if we have time, we'll share a little bit about that. But if you registered in the last hour, we sent you that educator handbook. And so you can go through it and kind of see what I mean. But thank you for sharing that about kind of staging the photograph, deciding what they wear, because it's a really important element. Okay, so my next question for you is, and maybe this is getting a little too far into another project of yours, you're really active in this, but you just finished the New American Voters 2020. So would you like to tell us a little bit about that and kind of the connection to Stronger Shines the Light?
Yes. So with the election coming, I thought a lot about, I just felt like it was really important that I do something around the election. And I just had a lot of different projects going on, but then about 6 weeks before the election, I had a break and I realized, okay, now is the time. Like, if I am gonna go for this, I need to go for it right now. And simultaneously, I found out about a national campaign called New American Voters 2020 that was initiated by a group called the National Partnership for New Americans, I think. And they launched New Americans 2020. So I saw, and they were framing it as, this is a national effort. We want to involve organizations and agencies all over the country. We want to share information here so that no one has to reinvent the wheel. So I was looking at, I thought, well, maybe I can create a campaign in Boise, like a Boise-based campaign that's called, if I get their blessing, I can call it New Americans 2020 and sort of make it seem like, I don't know, they hired me to do it or something, but like, I knew that I wanted to create a poster campaign, and at least I started off with the idea that this would be a poster campaign. It ended up being a lot more, but I started off by hosting 2 open studios on 2 consecutive Saturdays. And I tried to get as many refugees or former refugees and immigrants to come, and who would be open to being photographed and be on a poster that would help encourage other refugees and immigrants to get involved in the electoral process. So I got about 13 people that ended up coming between both Saturdays, and we did, each person that came, we did their photograph, and then we did a short interview about their experience voting in their past country, their associations with voting and politics, how that may have changed, how they're feeling now, why are they motivated to vote now, why are they motivated to vote now, and just questions all around that topic. And then I recorded each of those conversations, and then I ended up then individually going back and forth with each person, because what I wanted to do was distill our conversation and their message down to one short statement that could go onto a poster. And so it was a really interesting process, because the question that I asked them was, if you could send a message to people, like to other people in your community, where if they passed by your poster, read your message, and your message were able to cut through and to their heart and inspire them to vote, what do you think that message would be? And so through several different back and forths, I was able with all 13 people to come up with one powerful statement. And so we ended up making 13 different posters, each different person, different statement. And then what I ended up doing was I printed all of those posters and we distributed them throughout downtown Boise. We put them up in small businesses, on telephone poles, as many places as we could. And then I also printed large versions of the posters in black and white, and I wheat pasted them onto the sides of buildings as well. So they were outdoors on the sides of buildings, they were inside of businesses. And then the next layer of what I wanted was billboards. And that was like the pipe dream, but then I ended up finding a funder and this organization called Church World Services, and we ended up getting the billboards up in 3 swing states. So we've had 5 billboards go up, and they were in Atlanta, Columbus, Ohio, and Greensboro, North Carolina. So it was amazing. It was like the most I've ever accomplished in 6 weeks, but it wasn't like, it was an absolute collective effort. And there were, and we also did voting education. We did COVID safe masks, but we had in-person voting education sessions at different apartment buildings. So we knocked on doors and helped people figure out where their polling locations were. We helped people register. We helped people get to early voting. We organized and coordinated rides so that if people wanted to vote but they didn't have a ride, we had a fleet of volunteers that were ready to give rides on election day. So we did a whole operation. So it was definitely a really amazing campaign and I would say half of it was all visually focused, and then half of it was actually get out the vote. Mm-hmm. And it was really successful, and it planted, I think we were able to create a infrastructure for the next election. So we figured out what worked, what didn't work, what we need to do next time. And yeah, it was, and I think we got a lot of people excited about voting, because there were a lot of people that don't have their citizenship yet, but they will in 4 years. Or we talked to a lot of high school students who aren't able to vote yet, but they will in the next election. So I think it was very important for community building.
Mm-hmm. So Stronger shines the light, and the work that you do in conjunction with it is very much evolving, and you're really active and doing things that are relevant and really meaningful, which I think is part of the reason that it's gone on for so long. It didn't gain traction right at the very beginning, but maybe are you surprised that it's had this far of an outreach and that you moved to Boise to continue it?
I think, the day after the 2016 election, I was a bit heartbroken, because I just thought, like, what is this going to mean for this project? Like, what kind of future can this project have if we don't have a resettlement program anymore? And over the last 4 years, it's just been really sad to see our numbers from admitting 125,000 refugees down to 15,000. And in Boise, we've barely had any new arrival families in the last several years. So it's been really challenging in a lot of ways, and hard to at times to know, like, what is the future. Of course the project will always have a purpose, but you know, I think I've had to sort of find the purpose like over and over again at different points in the political time that we're in. And now we're in a whole new time, and every moment, every political moment has sort of called for like a way, has called for this project to show up in a new way and a different way. And I'm grateful for that, because I mean, the last 4 years have just given me a lot of inspiration for why this work is really important. And if we do get back to our previous numbers of around in the 100,000s of refugees coming to the US every year, then, you know, it's gonna breathe new life into the project again. But I think in terms of like me knowing, I didn't know that this project would have such a lifespan, but I think it really comes down to, and I think for me, myself, as a person who's been a photographer since I was 11 years old, and I'm 39 now, and I have all these different personal projects that I've been carrying. A lot of projects, you know, you work on for maybe 2 years, maybe 1 year, maybe 3 years. But I think when I started this work, it was like, I didn't really know if it was going to be a personal project or if it was, but now I realize 5 years later, this is really, I think, my life's work, my life path, my purpose, this is like this, maybe I won't be doing this work until I'm 90, I don't know, but for right now, it feels like this is part of my purpose. And I think that whether it's manifesting in the form of Stronger Shines a Light Inside and telling the story specifically of people with refugee backgrounds, like it also can just evolve in so many different directions. And I'm just excited to see how it continues to grow. But I think the more I do the work, the more I realize like this is not just it's not just like a short-term thing. Like this is probably going to be my life's work.
Yeah, it's a huge part of your career and personal life, which I think is special.
Yeah.
Time has gone so fast. I'm gonna open it up to anyone that would like to ask you a question, Angie. Just unmute yourself or ask in the chat, but does anyone have a question for Angie?
I see Stephen asked a question about my experience in Salt Lake. Yes, so I came to Salt Lake in 2017. It was July and August of 2017. I spent about 6 weeks there. I had a grant from an organization called Welcoming America, and they chose they were looking at many different cities across the US, and they really wanted to choose a city that they felt like exemplified the idea of being a welcoming community. And they settled on Salt Lake. They felt like Salt Lake was the best example of a welcoming community, and they felt like it would yield the most stories and examples of how people have come together in Salt Lake to welcome refugees in a really meaningful way. So I knew, I was really excited to come. I spent every day, I probably had like 2 or 3 shoots a day. I worked with the IRC. I worked with Catholic Relief Services. I don't remember if I worked with Batar in particular. I'm trying to remember the name of the director that I met with then, but I photographed a lot of, like, there were a lot of pairs of people with refugee backgrounds paired with, like, you know, Salt Lake residents that had been volunteers at the IRC for several years. I showed a lot of people coming together and working together, and a lot of like really amazing long-term friendships that came from people coming together and getting to know each other. And yeah, it was an amazing experience. And one of the pictures, there's a family, their last name is Dahir. They're originally from Somalia. They're 5 sisters, and they are all incredible. All are pretty politically engaged. And one of the pictures I took of Ozma Dahir ended up in Oprah magazine. So that was kind of a fun way for all the work I did in Salt Lake, that was the one picture that kind of made it into a magazine type of situation. But I loved Salt Lake. I loved it. And then let's see.
Back.
What?
Come back.
I know. I wanted to bring one of the billboards to Salt Lake, actually. So about 10 days before the election, I was reaching out to a few people that I knew there to see because with the billboards, I wish I could share with you, maybe I can drop a picture of a billboard into the chat. I reached out to try to get one of the billboards to go up in Salt Lake. Because I just think it's important to have I wanted to have some kind of a local partner, or a local agency, local buy-in that said, like, this is important, we want this here. But I think it was too late in the game and we didn't have enough time. But I was trying, and I want to come to Salt Lake so much. It's just COVID. Ugh. It's the worst.
A little tricky.
I'm over it. Okay, so let's see. We have a photography student. I'm wondering how you connect with different platforms in order to share your work on a national scale. Gosh, that's a really tough question. I feel like that's a whole other conversation we can have. If you want to have a one-on-one, I'm happy to tell you about that, because it's a lot of different things. And I don't want to bore everyone here.
I'd love to chat with you later if that's okay.
Okay,
then.
yeah, that's
Thank
great.
you so much.
And then Sarah asked if I've done any projects with refugees in Latino America. I have not. We don't have, here in Boise, our highest number of refugees come from the Congo, Iraq, Afghanistan. So just because of the populations that we have here, I haven't had as much of a chance to work with refugees in Latino America, but I really want to. And I think that depending on the different cities that I might be going to in the future, post-COVID, I'll have more of an opportunity, hopefully with a different leadership. And if our refugee program shifts, we'll have more people from Central America and South America. Have I seen an increase in friendships between refugees and Boise natives, quote unquote? I would say I have not seen an increase in friendships. I think honestly the last 4 years have been really rough, and our numbers of refugees have gone down dramatically. Our program, in our public high schools, we had a program called the Bridge program, which was specifically designed to help be that bridge for newly arrived students to sort of adjust to high school and make that, because a lot of people come with different levels of education, and sort of help for the first 2 years that they're in America, help them kind of adjust and get like acclimated to the American public education system. So when shortly after Trump came into office, the Bridge program was totally defunded and they ended it. So I think that played a pivotal role in helping students create those like social threads to other students and teachers and everything. So, and then, I felt, and then we've also simultaneously in Boise, I don't know if it's the same in Utah, Salt Lake, but we've had a tremendous increase in population. Like everyone is moving here from everywhere. And we just have such an influx of new people that, so I think the combination of like our population demographics have shifted dramatically in the last 5 years, 4 years, and then our refugee population is pretty much been totally cut off. A lot of the refugees who were already living here have moved away because the housing crisis here, it's really hard to find affordable housing. So a lot of people have moved out of Boise to the surrounding areas. So there's just been a real shift in where people live, how they connect, and then of course COVID. So I feel like I've seen a dramatic decrease actually in relationships and friendships, which I really hope that changes now. Let's see. Oh yeah, the poster. So any other questions I can answer? I'm curious, for the educators in the group, I'm just curious how many of you, how much are you working with refugee students? What are your different educational environments like? I know everything's online right now, but I guess pre-COVID, and then how you've been adapting to online school, like are you on a daily basis working with refugee students, or what are your experiences like?
We have some shy educators. Or even if that's not your profession, maybe previously you volunteered at a nonprofit or a resource for refugees in your community. Maybe how the work has changed, if you've had more or less of it.
Angie?
Yeah.
I was once on the board of the Humanities Utah, and their oral history program did a really quite extensive oral history project with refugees in Utah. And the documentation of those stories was, and the photographs like what you've done was just incredible. And it really changed the culture here in really quite remarkable ways, to be more open and friendly to, I think it was called Refugees Next Door or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
It was an effort to try to help people understand how close and how diverse and how personal these resettlement issues really are.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, there's been a number of those. I can also think of New Americans of Salt Lake. That was a project kind of similar to Humans of New York, where it was a lot on social media. That's where it lived, and they would have one portrait and then kind of a quote by that person. I think Utahns respond really well to the arts. Our art scene is really vibrant and thriving all the time here. We have ballet, dance, a lot of theater and arts. And so I think projects like these really make an impact. But again, it's such a nuanced way that they influence people's lives, like friendships. Someone asked about that. And a big part of that, I think, is the political climate that we are all in. And especially for refugees, navigating in can be really challenging. So.
Yeah, and that's one I've just been asking myself ever since really election day, or the days after election day, is just, where do we go from here, and how can we how can I try to use the work or the elements that I weave together with Stronger Shines the Light Inside, I mean, on a greater scale, like in terms of our country and coming together again. And and realizing that like we really have to be united before we can move forward or have a future that we're all going to feel good about. And like how do you try to cross it? Just feels like the divisions are so great that you know, I think at the top of my mind has really been like, how can I use my work now to try to create, to just lessen that divide.
Mhm.
And yeah.
There's a lot of work to do. For sure.
And
Would
I think
there
mhm.
would there be a way to, I don't know, just as I listen, I work a lot with, like I did some video at the University of Utah, and I work at Central Civico de Mexicano and do just some videos and that kind of thing. But I mean, would there be a way to, you know, show each person, the individual or the communities, what they add to the community, what they're adding, instead of that what we're supporting them, or what everybody's thinking that we're supporting them, but to show their unique individual and how much they give by their uniqueness, that they enhance life, you know, like art enhances life. Seeing those beautiful pictures, I mean, that just enriched me to their personality and what they give, the beauty that they give. And it's like when I see, I mean, I'm not trying to be like point out somebody, a beautiful Muslim all in her costume walking down the street, it takes my breath away, and it makes me want to know more about that person. I mean, they're bringing beauty to me, and I want to know more. And I wonder if there's some way through photography, videos, of enhancing, enriching, and showing how much they enrich our society by bringing them, not only by us being philanthropists, but them being here, you know, accepting the gift, or I don't know what I'm trying to say, but something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I think through that's one thing I've tried to really communicate through the pictures, is just how much beauty and how much depth there is that all of these experiences are bringing into our society and our communities. And then through reading the interviews, it's like you really just realize like how just an incredible amount of depth, and that it really is a two-way street. Like both people benefit from forming relationships and crossing cultural divides, or figuring out how to communicate even if you don't speak the same language. I mean, there's so much that we all gain, probably more than they gain from being, you know, through those relationships. So yeah, were you saying, Marla, was your question like posing in general, like how are there ways as a community that we can begin to show this, or was it specifically?
Well, yeah, it's just like united anybody. Well, like I always think that in schools, beginning when kids are young, if you showed videos or portrait of them with their families and the things they like to do, show it to the class, and people think they're a star in the first place, but showing that what they like to do, so they start liking that person already. Every year they show a new video of them with their family as they grow. And this has just been my idea, and so I just throw that out as a board of a thought of an idea. Kind of.
Yeah. And also, if anyone, I just noticed a question from Sarah just about would I be available to give a Zoom presentation. I just want everyone to know I would love to share any more information with you, or give, if you want to do a Zoom presentation for your students, like, you're more than welcome. Email me and we can set it up. I'm more than happy to give more time and do another presentation.
Angie, I'll put your email in the chat right now. It's Angie at Angie Smith Photography, right?
Yes. Yes, yes.
Great questions.
Yes. Thank you everyone so much for being here. I'm not used to talking about myself a lot, so I sometimes feel a little weird, like, oh, I don't like to talk this much about myself, but I appreciate you listening and being curious and asking questions. And yeah, I hope to come back to Salt Lake. I really do.